It remains to be seen whether there is a treaty, and if there is, whether Donald Trump can get the Senate of the United States to approve it. This is Dr. Gary Kellner, and I would like to welcome you to today's edition of Fair Game. President Donald Trump announced on June 17 that an MOU had been agreed to by the Islamic Republic of Iran and the U.S. Negative reaction came from across the political spectrum, including President Trump's MAGA base. The Memorandum to end the U.S.-Israel war with Iran is a document of diplomatic loopholes. Western officials and experts have said it has hazy pledges to underwrite each step in search of a lasting peace. A 2-month timeline to solve issues that have vexed negotiators for decades, and calls for finding an unspecified mechanism to enforce terms of any deal. So what's the problem? I mean, this is only a memorandum. It is not a final agreement. This is not a treaty. Well, the heart of the problem is that the MOU has been structured to bring Iran to the table, according to Matthew Levit, an Iran expert at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. And it demonstrates that the United States wanted this deal a lot more than Iran did. It is front-loaded with deliverables from the United States and its allies toward Iran, rather than the other way around. According to one European official who wanted to remain nameless on the condition of anonymity, he said, "So many terms are not defined, and Iran benefits the most." Publicly, European leaders have praised the deal as a valuable initial step because, the same official said, "We don't want to publicly say that it is a fool's work." Much of the criticism of the MOU, especially from Israel, U.S.'s ally in the war, has focused on what it fails to address: the buildup of Iran's arsenals of drones and ballistic missiles, its backing of Hezbollah and Hamas and other regional proxies, and its abysmal record of human rights abuses. So let's take a few minutes and let's dig a little bit deeper into the terms and conditions of the agreement. The most striking thing to me is that the MOU is like a massive vitamin B12 shot to Iran's economy, which has teetered on the brink of collapse for years and has been on life support since hostilities commenced on February 28. The MOU lifts the sanctions that have been in place for years. It pays Iran $300 billion in reparations so that Iran can rebuild its infrastructure. Secondly, it lifts the U.S. naval blockade on Iran, but it leaves the status of the Strait of Hormuz open to negotiation. Paragraph 5 is the heart of the problem. It says, upon the signing of this MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge. Here's the kicker, boys and girls, for 60 days only, from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. The traffic of commercial vessels will immediately start, and considering the need for removing technical and military obstacles and demining by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be instated within 30 days. The Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultan of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz, in discussion with other Persian Gulf littoral states, in line with the applicable international law and the sovereign rights of the coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz. What could possibly be wrong with that? Well, for starters, the strait doesn't belong to Iran. The strait is international waters bordered by 3 countries and heavily used by dozens more, none of whom have been invited to the dance, none of whom have been a party to the MOU. Final problem with the MOU is that it commits Israel to the terms of an agreement they have not been a party to negotiating. The state of Israel is not the 51st state of these United States, and no U.S. president has the right to unilaterally negotiate any agreement on Israel's behalf, and certainly doesn't have the right to impose one. So what does the U.S. get in return? A promise from Iran that the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. Friends, if that holds, that is huge. But that is a big if. We are talking about a state who routinely describes America as the big Satan and Israel as the little Satan. It has been committed to the destruction of both. We are talking about a state that has sponsored most of the terrorism in the Middle East for the last 47 years. It is a big if. The question is it worth it? Donald Trump is not the first U.S. president to have to grapple with this kind of question. They grappled with it at the end of the 1950s after nearly 15 years of Cold War. And in his inaugural speech on January 20, 1961, President John F. Kennedy stepped out and boldly said, "We must never negotiate out of fear, but we must never fear to negotiate." He was able to get the first nuclear non-proliferation treaty with the Soviet Union in 1963, something a lot of people didn't believe was possible, and a treaty that many people did not believe the Soviet Union would honor, but it did. 1972. America has not had official relations with China in nearly 25 years. Within months after the Communist Chinese took over the mainland, we were enmeshed in a war with them in Korea, in which tens of thousands of American soldiers died and hundreds of thousands of Chinese. We didn't talk to each other. And yet Richard Nixon, the ultimate Cold Warrior, who had made his bones on criticizing what he called the Chi-Coms and their fellow travelers, perhaps he was the only man in America who could have gone to China and begun to open up the avenues of communication. And then, of course, Ronald Reagan, who stood in front of the Brandenburg Gate and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." But within 2 years, Ronald Reagan meets with Mikhail Gorbachev in Reykjavik, Iceland, and he offers to eliminate all nuclear weapons if Russia will. And he offers to give them the Star Wars technology. Donald Trump has played tough with Iran. And whether we agree or disagree with the MOU, I think we could all agree that Iran getting a nuclear weapon is a bad thing for the world. It makes the Middle East a far dicier, dangerous place. There is lots to hate in the MOU. And it remains to be seen whether there is a treaty, and if there is, whether Donald Trump can get the Senate of the United States to approve it. Is it worth it? Well, there's only one way for us to find out, and that is to walk down the road of negotiation and see what happens. Now, I am reminded of a Russian proverb that President Reagan loved to quote to Gorbachev. And the first time Gorbachev smiled, but by about the 10th time Reagan said it, Gorbachev said he was ready to kill himself. Reagan would look at Gorbachev on the subject of nuclear weapons and he would say, in the words of the old Russian proverb, trust and verify. Well, a little better translation of it is actually check and recheck. If it is possible to get Iran to forswear its nuclear ambitions, and if the mechanisms are in place to check and recheck, to verify that they're actually living by the terms of the final agreement. As odious as certain elements of this MOU are to most of us, it might prove to be worth it. This is Dr. Gary Kellner. Thank you for joining us today on Fair Game.